ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This is third video on the nature of Atma. When we speak of man, we should consider him as the combination of the body, the mind, and the spirit, Atma. The body is an instrument for performing actions. Mind is the faculty which determines what is right or wrong. The Atma, spirit, is that which is ever pure, unchanging, and permanent. Man implies three things: doing, knowing, and being. It is when the body, the mind, and the Atma are present in union that a human being can be said to exist. When the body alone acts without regard to the mind and the Atma, that person is said to be in the animal state. When the mind alone acts in association with the body without regard to the Atma, that combination is described as demonic. What about achieving the divine state? For that, Swami says one must be installed in the Atmic principle, transcending the body and the mind. If examples are needed for understanding that statement, those of the sages Ramana and Ramakrishna should suffice. Reality, Maya, and all that. It is necessary at this juncture to make a reference to the famous Maya, or the so-called illusion, much discussed by Vedantic philosophers. Many interpretations have been given to this word, such as Maya is the inscrutable divine power used for creation. Maya means illusion or delusion. Maya is the dazzle of Prakriti, or as Goethe beautifully puts it, mysterious even in open day. Nature retains her veil despite our clamors. That we see does not willingly display, cannot be wrenched from her with levers, screws, and hammers, and so on. The world appears so very real to us. Why then do philosophers dismiss it as unreal? They do so with good reason, but in order to comprehend precisely what they mean, one must proceed carefully. Let us start with the dream state. No one would have any difficulty in dismissing the dream experiences as unreal, but a little reflection would show that we so dismiss only while we are in the waking state. During the dream itself, however, those so called illusory experiences seem very real. In fact, during the dream, one has no cognizance whatsoever of the world experienced during the waking state, so much so for the person dreaming, the phenomenal world simply does not exist. Much as we might dispute, philosophers are fond of equating the two kinds of experiences, and the Janka story narrated earlier is merely an echo of this view. The French philosopher Descartes shared this perspective and declared, "When I consider the matter carefully, I do not find a single characteristic by means of which I can certainly determine whether I am awake or whether I am dreaming. The visions of a dream and the experiences of my waking state are so much alike that I am completely puzzled, and I do not really know that I am dreaming at this moment. Swami too often refers to the two experiences as night dream and daydream. For most people, all this might seem just a play on words, and so let us examine the argument more closely. The world we say is real. Now, what is meant by reality? To a Vedantin, reality, which is the same as truth, refers to something that is permanent, that is unchanging and is ever constant. Stated that way, clearly the Brahman, the Brahma, Atma alone qualifies to be called real. Then whatever happens to the world which seems so real to us, is that all an illusion? This business of illusion comes up largely on account of a famous statement due to says Sankara. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, meaning God is true but the world is false. Sankara said the world is false basically in the sense that it is transient. However, in his prolific writings, he does advance rather involved arguments to justify that the world is actually an illusion. How can that be? One would ask. If Sankara felt pain, and he sure must have, would he call that an illusion? Actually, Sankara explains pleasure and pain also away. But those arguments being rather complicated, we need not get involved in them. Instead, one might accept, as Swami says, that the experiences of the phenomenal world do have a reality of their own, although this reality is transient and empirical. It is important not to summarily dismiss this world as an illusion, for that might lead to the temptation to do things that are decidedly immoral. Indeed, those who wrote down moral codes and the canons of Dharma did so with the clear understanding that for ordinary mortals this world is not an illusion. Why then waste time with a lot of fancy talk? There is a purpose. First, let us ask, what precisely does Vedanta mean when it refers to illusion? Swami provides us with the answer. Illusion refers to that which does not exist. Imagining that which does not exist to exist is Maya. Whatever you think exists does not really exist. Whatever you think does not exist really exists. No doubt the phenomenal world strongly projects a reality of its own, but it is only ephemeral or transitory. Behind it, however, lies a substratum of what might be called a higher reality, which is the true reality. If one sees only the foreground and fails even to appreciate that there is a background, then One is justified in talking about an illusion. The standard and classical example provided by Vedanta in this context is the rope and the snake mix up. There lies a curled up rope in a dark room. A person enters the room, sees something lying coiled on the floor, immediately screams, "Snake, snake," and then rushes out of the room. A lamp is fetched, and people enter the room. In the light, they see not a snake but a mere coiled rope. Vedanta uses this example to effectively declare the following: what really existed was the rope. There was only the rope, and it was there always. Before the person came, when he first saw it, mistaking it for a snake, and later when the people came with a lantern, however, when the person first entered, he saw a snake instead of the rope that was actually there. He did not see the rope at all, but just a snake, and that's why he yelled in fear. Now, where did this non existent snake come from? From his mind. This image manufactured by his mind was superposed on the picture of the rope captured by the eyes and interpreted wrongly. In short, an image, a picture that did not exist was superposed and on something that actually existed. This superposition of the non existent is an illusion. For ordinary mortals, the world is an illusion because they are not able to clearly see that youth, wealth, beauty, and power are not permanent. Instead, they act as if they last forever. They are dazzled by the beauties and the attractions which the phenomenal world has to offer, but are totally blind to the Creator who has infinitely more to offer if approached, of course. Thus, if the Vedantin is at pains to prove that the world is unreal, he has a valid reason for doing so. As Swami says, Brahma is the rope, Jagat, the world, is the serpent, superimposed on it by reason, afflicted by illusion. Frequently, the argument is presented as if the world itself is a mere illusion and nothing more. If it were so, why should avatars come? Why should one particular avatar take the trouble to teach something called the Gita? Why should another, coming 5,000 years later, spend day and night tirelessly explaining how to translate Krishna's advice into practice? Indeed, one can even ask whether the avatars themselves are an illusion. No, the cosmos has a valid reality of its own. Explaining precisely what this means, Swami observes, Some call this world illusory and ephemeral. It is described as Maya or Mitha, an illusion or a delusion. This is evidently wrong. I am real, Satya, you are real. The whole universe is real. Consciousness is immanent in everything. To, to go about thinking the world to be unreal, illusory, and so on will amount to practicing a fraud on the people and not proclaiming the truth. If the world is unreal, then even teaching that it is unreal is equally unreal and has no meaning. No, that is not so. This cosmos is real. The forms in it may change, bodies may change, but what should be recognized is that at the core of all things is a fundamental reality. To drive home the point, Swami sometimes uses the example of the movie. The movie is projected on a screen which forms the substratum or the basis. No screen, no images. The images are fleeting, but the screen is permanent. It might be argued that the screen is uninteresting and therefore irrelevant, and that one goes to the movie to see and enjoy the images and not to ponder about the screen. This argument may apply to the screen in the movie theater, but one must appreciate that one is merely offering an analogy for the substratum. Further, the images of life are equally transient and totally irrelevant in the long run. What is relevant is the substratum called God, and as long as one is not alive to that, one is justified in claiming that the world is unreal, illusory, like the non existent snake in the Vedantic example. The problem with the world as it is normally perceived is that it makes one forget God with day to day life, making us think or feel that God is to be approached only when one is in difficulty or if one is otherwise free from problems. He merits only an occasional courtesy call, as a Vedantin would point out. No matter how much one eats during a dream, it does not provide nourishment to the physical body. In the same way, one cannot expect spiritual progress merely from being immersed in the world without linking it all to one's basic roots, that is the Atma. Needless to say that this theme also formed the core of the Swami's divine discourses. The movie analogy might perhaps be used once again to drive home the point about the illusory nature of the phenomenal world. In India, it is not unusual to see simple and unsophisticated people crying during movie, unable to bear the sufferings portrayed on the screen. The urban sophisticate sitting in the adjacent seat laughs at the naivete of the villager and patronizingly tells him, "Why are you crying? This is not real." In fact, the actor gets paid for acting as though he she is suffering. The name or the wise one has the same comment for the ordinary human who, unable to see the transient nature of this world, gets over involved emotionally and inflicts on himself unnecessary pain and suffering. From the Jnani's point of view, man is as foolish or knave as the ignorant villager shedding tears in a movie. In short, the Vedantin's argument is neither silly nor trivial. On the contrary, it has a profound significance, and one should not be under the impression that Swami has contradicted it. It should be carefully noted that Swami uses the word real instead of real. The latter is what we would normally use, and in this picture of reality, there is seldom any place for God. But in Swami's picture, God is primary. That is the sense in which one should understand remarks like the cosmos is real, etc. Says Ramana, who often use the movie screen analogy, and he says, you see various scenes passing on a cinema screen. The fire seems to burn buildings to ashes, water seems to wreck ships, but the screen on which the pictures are projected remain unburnt and dry. Why? Because the pictures are unreal and the screen real. On the same way, in the same way, the world is a phenomenon upon the substratum of the single reality which is not affected by it in any way. Reality is only one. Recall Krishna's remark that the Atma cannot be cut, wetted, etc. Talk of illusion is only due to the point of view. Change your viewpoint to that of knowledge, and you will perceive the universe to be only Brahma. Being now immersed in the world, you see it as a real world. Get beyond it and it will disappear, and reality alone will remain. Reduced to brass tacks, what it all means is the following. Ordinary mortals need not tie themselves into knots about whether this world is real or illusory. The world has an empirical reality of its own, which is safe to accept. However, having said that, one must also be careful not to imagine that many things which are actually transient are long lasting or even eternal. A simple example is in order here. Let us say there is a person holding a very high office which comes with many privileges. The person happily enjoys all these perks, but in the process becomes oblivious to the fact that the moment he steps down, away go the trappings. He knows but forgets or allows the fact to escape from his memory. Come, comes finally the day when the tenure ends, and with it a new life sense perks start, but the person finds it to be a shattering experience. Why? Because he has allowed himself to be under an illusion. example brings home the lesson that what one must really guard against is the growth of attachment due to the superposition of wrong notions on reality as it actually is. In this sense, the comment and warnings of the Vedantin are valid. In short, it is not the world which is an illusion, but our view of it. The world as created by God is like the rope of the Vedantic example, but our view of it is like the snake. So, what we have to watch out for really are our interpretations and constructs. Swami summarized it very nicely. You see a rope and think that it is a snake, but there is no snake at all. You are subjected to fear and tension by imagining that there is a snake where there really is no snake. What is the reason for this fear? Imagining things which really do not exist is the cause for the fear. You are experiencing a number of sorrows because you have forgotten the fact that the entire world is the very embodiment of God. It is not just world as you think. You see the world from the phenomenal point of view. You are not looking at it from the process of inquiry. If you were to look at the world through the eyes of inquiry, you would realize that it is only a flow or a stream of continuous change. This ongoing, uninterrupted flow of changes is the basic characteristics of the phenomenal world. It continuous flow means a stream of changing truth, a truth which is qualified and therefore not fully true. It is a combination of pure truth, which is always unchanging, and untruth, which deals with things that are changing. In fact, there are basically two types of illusion one must guard against. The first is external in original. The first is external in origin. Here, illusion makes us see multiplicity in creation, obscuring the underlying unity. The second is internal. Here, illusion makes us think we are the body, whereas we are actually the Atma. Ignorance is the source of both, and hence it is that ignorance must be driven out with knowledge. Notwithstanding all that has been said, ordinary mortals can justifiably worry about Maya and how to transcend it. There is, however, no cause for worry, and Swami reminds us of assurance Krishna gave to Arjuna. Atma, I am the authority that wields Maya, this Jagat universe, which is a product of Maya, moves and behaves according to my will. So, whatever is attached to me and acts accordingly to my will cannot be harmed by Maya. Maya dare not approach anyone who has taken refuge in me. The hurdle of Maya can be crossed either by developing the attitude of oneness with the infinite God or the attitude of complete surrender to the Lord. Advaitam. Krishna told Arjuna that he was not the body but the Atman. Out of infinite compassion, this same message is being dinned out our reluctant ears day in and day out by Swami. It is one thing to repeat parrot like that I am the Atma and quite another to actually feel that way. What is important is to progress to the state where one truly feels one is Atma, and it is in order to remind man of this vital journey that the scriptures built in caveats known as the Mahavakyas, one of which was earlier referred to earlier, namely Aham Brahmasmi, meaning I am Brahma. How does one make this pilgrimage to Brahma? Is it enough to repeat the Mahavakyas like a tape recorder? Obviously, the answer is no. What then must one do? Like every journey, the journey to Brahma involves several stages. It is customary to identify in this long and arduous journey three important stages known respectively by the name Devatam, Visishta Advaitam, and Advaitam. The names might sound a bit forbidding, but what they imply is not difficult to understand. Before proceeding further, let us define the principal objective to be the determination of the answer to the question, who am I? Indeed, the purpose of human life is to enable one to arrive for himself or herself at the answer. Swami helps us. When you are born, you cry, Koham, Kohum, who am I? If you waste your entire life in only maintaining your physical existence, when will you ever be able to understand who you really are? There is a deeper significance contained in your life than merely caring for your body. Caring for your body. You have to start your life with Koham, who am I? And you have to end your life with Soham, I am He, I am that. You have no, you have to recognize that you yourself are the divinity. So that is our destination. The feeling that I am God. To put it somewhat differently, from God we have come and to God we must return. That is, we must go back to where we came from. Now, the recommended starting point for this eventual realization is Dvaitam, or an attitude of duality. Here one does not load oneself with abstract notions difficult to comprehend but simply accepts God as a supreme being and that this God must be properly worshipped. Without complicating matters, one merely says, God is God and I am I. We two are different. That is how duality enters the picture. He is supreme, whereas I am insignificant. I must worship him. Swami summarizes it as follows. At the very beginning, when you say Dasoham, O Lord, I am your servant, the Lord is separate and the servant is separate, and their respective status is clearly different. In the Dvaitam stage, one has fully body consciousness, meaning that one identifies oneself with the body or the lower itself. Swami stresses this by remarking, you remain small by identifying yourself all the time with the body. You think, Ahem, Dehasmi, I am the body. This thought keeps you in a state of littleness. From Dvayatam, Dvaitam, one next proceeds to the Visishta Advaitam stage, wherein one concedes that there is a bit of divinity in oneself and one recognizes that one is actually a spark of the divine. The earlier chant, Dasoham, I am your servant, is now replaced by Soham, I am he. One has no doubt elevated oneself, but a distinction is still being maintained by referring to I and he as if they are separate. For this reason, Visishta Advaitam is often referred to as qualified monism or qualified non dualism. Swami says that this is the stage where one recognizes that although one might worship God using many different names and forms, the ultimate behind is just one, urging that one must progress from Dvaitam or duality to the next stage of Visishta Advaitam or qualified non dualism, Swami observes. But go on from Ahem Dehasmi to Ahem Jivasmi, from I am the body to I am the soul, the spark of the divine. In this way, rise up from the stage of dualism, Dvaitam, to qualified non dualism, Visishta Advaitam. Now comes the final stage of the journey when all trace of distinction between divinity and oneself is erased. Indeed, one transcends to the dizzy state where there is nothing but oneself. This is the last stop. Advaitam, initially the cry was Dasoham, I am your servant. Then it became shortened to Soham, I am he, and now it becomes truncated even further to simply Ahem, meaning I am F. About these changes, Swami comments Ahem means I, it is the pure self without any modification or limitation. The journey from Dasoham to Ahem is a little like the healing process that takes place with a wound. The protective layer of hard skin that forms over the wound eventually falls off by itself as the wound heals. When both the and so covering the pure eye have fallen off, then you will be in the final stage of Advaitam or non dualism. Then you are immersed in the one truth, Ahem, Ahem, I am I. Instead of Dasoham to Soham to Ahem. One can also describe the three-stage journey via the phases Ahem Dehasmi to Ahem Jivasmi, both of which have already been mentioned, to finally Ahem Brahmasmi, as Swami says. This Ahem Brahmasmi is the stage of complete non-dualism, Advaitam. The feeling you start with that you are the body is steeped in dualism. It is very birthplace of sorrows. As long as you are immersed in duality, everything is sorrow and grief. If you identify yourself with the Atma, everything will be happiness and joy. Much has been written on the subject of Aham Brahmasmi, but none has clarified the matter as Swami has. He declares the principle of I is all pervasive. People may call themselves by different names, but the one thing common to all of them is the concept of I. The very first word in the universe was I. Ahem is the first name of the Lord. Ahem Brahmasmi. Ahem comes first and Brahmasmi comes afterwards. Actually, although the Mahavakyas are often taken as proclaiming the philosophy of Advaitam, Swami says that if one examines carefully, even they fall slightly short of true Advaitam, he remarks. Declarations like Ahem Brahmasmi and Tattvam Asi are cited as pronouncement proclaiming Advaitam. But this is not correct. These statements refer to two entities, Aham and Brahma, Tat and Tvam. The recognition that the one and the same Atma dwells in all is true Advaitam. Swami then goes on to say that man is the image of the Creator. The I indicates the oneness of man and his Creator. Man must therefore shatter all barriers and rise to the level of the Creator. That is the purpose of life. To summarize, there are three stages in the road to God realization: dualism, Dvaitam, qualified non dualism, Visishta Advaitam, and full non dualism, Advaitam. In the beginning, one declares, I am a devotee of God, clearly implying that God and the devotee are two distinct and separate entities. God is believed to far away and the quest is to get closer to Him. After a long journey, one finally comes face to face with God, enabling one to declare, O Lord, I am your devotee. Notice the change in the declaration which comes about because one feels him inside one's heart. The third and the ultimate stage is one where truth dawns and the realization occurs that I am God and God is me. As Swami explains, Advaitam is the stage when one cannot distinguish between God and oneself. Of course, it is a long journey to get there, and there is an anecdote which emphasizes the point. Once in Vrindavan, Swarm came out for darshan. On the way, he saw a few boys standing and stopped to make small conversation with them. As is often his habit, he asked the boys one by one, Who are you? Dutifully, they all stated their respective names except the last boy, who answered, I am Swami. Swami smiled and said, in that case, you go and give darshan. The subject of Advaitam features prominently in a large number of Swami's divine discourses. Naturally, and Swami spares no pains to use different analogies and examples to drive home the point. One of these, which is particularly easy to grasp, is the two circle analogy. He says, consider for a moment a very big circle and consider that just by its side and separate from it there is another circle, one which is very much smaller. The big circle may be thought of as God and the small one a jiva, the individual soul. Here, the individual is different and distinct from God. This is Dvaitam, dualism. Next, you drag the small circle so that it lies within the big circle. You then have Visishta Advaitam or qualified non-dualism. Now the Jiva is part of divinity. He exists in God. What then is the meaning of Jiva becoming totally merged in God? The small circle has to broaden itself and grows bigger and bigger until it has fully expanded to the size of the big circle. At that point, the two circles are indistinguishable. Jiva and Deva, God are one. Man has merged into God. This is Advaita, complete non-dualism. It is worth appreciating that though Advaitam non-dualism is the ultimate goal, it is prudent to start with Dvaitam, dualism, which is why the path of bhakti or devotion assumes so much importance, and that also is the reason why both Krishna and Swami lay so much stress on bhakti. At the same time, it is equally important not to lose sight of one's intrinsic divinity. To underscore this point, Swami often calls attention to the example of Christ, who began by declaring that I am the messenger of God, later modified it to I am the Son of God, and then to I and my Father are one, indicative of his transition through the three stages discussed in detail above. Finally, Christ referred to the Holy Ghost, which is the same as the fourth state discussed by Mandukya. The following anecdote may be of some value in stressing the importance of ahem. Once in Kodaikanal, Swami asked the assembled gathering, who am I? Various replies were given like, you are Shirdi Sai incarnated, you are Krishna come again, you are a Purnavatar, etc. Swami kept smiling and shaking his head as if to indicate that the answers were not correct. Finally, an elderly gentleman made bold to say, Swami, you are yourself. Pleased Swami nodded his head and remarked, that is the correct answer. I am myself. I am I. I, says Swami, is the first name of divinity. Commenting on it, he remarks, there is only one reality that exists in this world. That reality is divinity. What is the first name of that reality? Neither the Atma nor God nor even Om is the first name. In fact, I is the first name of divinity. This I is frequently used in daily life for I is the basis of all our deeds. I is the wo- vital breath, the self. That's why it is said, Isvara Sarva Bhutanam. The Lord manifests Himself in all. It is because this I is existing in all that the Lord is said to manifest in all. The pure Ahem state is what Christ referred to as the Holy Ghost. On this topic, Ramana says, of all the definitions of God, none is so well put as the biblical state, I am that I am. Exodus. None is so direct as the name I am of Jehovah. The Absolute is, it is self God. The subject of Advaitam is a vast ocean, and what has been discussed here is just a small portion of it. However, the important thing is not the acquisition of scholarship about Advaitam but to practice it. And as far as that is concerned, Swami's pronouncement, some of which have been cited above, should be ample. In a nutshell, Advaitam means seeing unity in diversity. On the face of it, this might seem impossible and even meaningless. However, the essential point is the feeling of oneness rather than indulging in mental gymnastics to pretend that the tiger, the fish, and the coconut tree are all alike. They certainly are not, as far as form and other earthly characteristics are concerned. But at the same time, they all are projections of the same one or Brahma. To drive home the point that there is no qualitative difference in the basis for the diverse form, Swami often cites the example of the ocean, the waves, and the foam. The ocean is vast and remains constant and is like the Brahma. From the ocean are born the waves. They are numerous in number and exhibit literally infinite variations. To two waves are exactly alike. Further, they are all evanescent, evanescent, and yet the water in the wave tastes just as salty as the water of the still ocean. The same applies to the foam also. There is thus an underlying unity between the one ocean, the numerous waves, and the foam that rides the waves piggyback. On this topic of the waves and the sea, Swami observed, your reality is the Atma, a wave of the Paramatma. The one object of this human existence is to visualize that reality, that Atma, that relationship between the wave and the sea. The one steeped in Advaitam always sees and is conscious of this underlying unity in diversity and is indifferent to the superficial diversity except perhaps in a purely functional sense. As Ramakrishna says, the tiger also is God, but better not to go near him, especially during his lunch hour. Once Once one recognizes and remembers this underlying unity, others' joy becomes one's own joy. Likewise, others' suffering and pain becomes one's own. In short, there is no difference whatsoever between the other and oneself. All are one and there is only one. That is what Advaitam is really all about. Swami ends the Swami adds the final and lucid touch in a characteristic manner. He says that the statement unity in diversity must be considered as three levels: at the level of the body, the mind, and the heart or the soul. Where the soul is concerned, there is only one Atma. In other words, there is no such thing as my Atma, your Atma, and so on. At the level of the heart, therefore, there is no diversity whatsoever, and the question of seeking unity in diversity simply does not arise. At the other extreme, and namely that of the body, it would be both foolish and naive to seek unity since the bodies are different. This is what the example of this tiger just discussed brings out. The quest for Advaitam really belongs to the realm of the mind. It is the mind which must be disciplined into feeling that there is an all encompassing unity which envelops diversity. Summary: as mentioned earlier, this is a heavy chapter. A summary might therefore be useful and is given below. Vedanta posits that a human being can exist in three states: the waking, the dream, and the deep sleep state. There are two types of consciousness or awareness which exist: the primary and the secondary. The latter is what is usually referred to as consciousness. It is the one which makes the body aware of the external world. The primary consciousness or superior consciousness is always alert, whereas the secondary consciousness is fully operative only in the waking state, partially so in the dream state, and totally dormant in the deep sleep state. The primary consciousness relates to I or Ahem, whereas the secondary consciousness relates to small I or Ahankara or ego. The deep sleep state is fundamental or causal. The dream and the waking state emerge from it and dissolve in it. The Mandukya Upanishad relates these three states to the three letters A, U, and M of Om. Encompassing the three is the so-called fourth state Turiya. Mandukya relates Turiya to Om. Mandukya further states that Om leads to on to Om. The primary consciousness or primary awareness is also sometimes referred to as the self. This self cognizes all the various experiences and persists throughout as the permanent and constant witness. The permanent and constant witness which does not undergo any change along with changes in the three states is also called the Atma. As far as the cosmos is concerned, the human is the microcosm, the cosmos itself being the macrocosm. The three states experienced by the individual are respectively related to: one, the body; two, the mind; and third, the absolute reality. There are correspondingly three bodies: the physical body, the subtle body, and the causal body, respectively, which have experiences in the three states mentioned above. With each of these three states of the microcosm is associated a deity. They are Vasunara associated to the body, Tejasa for the mind, and Prajna primary consciousness. The macrocosm is simply the superposition of all the microcosm. Thus, all the bodies of all the beings constitute the physical universe or the gross world, also called the Bhutakasha. The union of all the minds similarly leads to the universal or the cosmic mind. This cosmic mind has a world of its own called the subtle world or Chitakasha. Likewise, there exists a macroscopic counterpart of the primary consciousness, which universal consciousness, which operates in a world called the Chidakasha. In other words, if the individual body belongs to and has experiences in the gross world or Bhutakasa, the individual mind similarly belongs to the subtle world or world of Chitakasa. While the individual primary consciousness is likewise a part of the universal consciousness associated to which the world called the Chidakasha. The presiding agencies of these three worlds or universes mentioned above are respectively Virata, Hiranyagarbha, and Iswara. Virata, Hiranyagarbha, and Iswara are respectively the macro counterparts of Vasunara, Tejasa, and Prajna. If one goes upwards in the microcosm, one goes through Vasunara, Tejasa, Prajna, and ends up with the Atma. If one does likewise in the macrocosm, one goes through Virata, Hiranyagarbha, and Iswara, ending up with Brahma. No matter which way one climbs, the distinction is the same. In other words, Atma equals Brahma. Thus, it is that one often says that the is in the macrocosm and vice versa. The atom is all pervasive, but just as space, while all pervasive, sometimes gets associated to local regions, like the space within a pot, for example. Atma can get trapped in bodies like the human body. Such an entity is called the embodied Atma or Jiva Atma. Under certain circumstances, when the Atma gets so embodied, it animates the being, provided the primary energy, the animated being then has life. What is usually termed soul refers to the embodied Atma or the Atma plus a subtle body. During life, the soul occupies a body, thus a living body equals gross body plus soul equals gross body plus subtle body plus Atma. Upon death, the soul departs, meaning that the Atma plus subtle body combination says goodbye to the gross or the physical body and floats away to have a separate and ephemeral ethereal existence. This separate existence lasts till the combination finds a new body to reside in, which is rebirth. The cycle of birth, death, and rebirth goes on seemingly without an end, but an end is possible. Or that is, rebirth can be prevented. When that happens, one says that the soul is liberated. Liberation moksha means that the Atma cuts loose from the subtle body. This can happen only through intense spiritual practice or sadhana. Two terms are often used, the Jivatma and the Paramatma. Seen from one point of view, the former refers to the limited Atma trapped in a body, whereas the latter refers to the unlimited Atma. Life thus consists of a journey from the limited to the unlimited. Stated briefly, Maya means superimposing a non existent thought or notion on reality. We see diversity where there actually is unity, that is Maya. There are three stages in the road to liberation or God realization. They are dualism or Dvaitam, qualified non-dualism or Visishta Advaitam, and complete non-dualism or Advaitam. One must progress stage by stage. A human being is a conglomerate of body, mind and soul Atma. Bodies are necessarily distinct and it would be silly to imagine they are all one. On the other hand, the Atma is indivisible and there is no question of diversity. There is no such thing as my Atma, your Atma, etc. Advaitam means the feeling of oneness. From the above remarks, it should be clear that the pursuit of Advaitam must start in the domain of the mind. It is at the mental level that all feelings of distinction and differences must be erased. That is really what Advaitam boils down to. When mental distinctions are dissolved, the mind itself may be said to have faded away. The end of the road is the feeling of I am. This is the state of total bliss. So this video is complete. Thank you for watching this video. Namaste.